What's up, family? I am back with another video today of some things that are on my mind. And by the way, if you enjoy content like this, make sure to connect with me on Patreon. We just launched it this week. These are exciting times. All right, so let's jump into it. Today I kind of want to talk about something that I came across while in college. It was a theological breaking point for me. And around this time, or really what got me thinking about this is this idea of in a progressive world, in a progressive society, why is it so easy to stay stuck in superstition? Why do so many people still cling to the irrational, right? And so this theological breaking point happened for me around 2012 in a college drama class, of all places, right? My professor, Dr. Bill Lipscomb, completely wrecked my worldview by introducing me to a concept that I had not heard of prior to. And I think this concept, in some ways, it kind of explains why we stay stuck for so long. Other than, of course, the video I did on why atheism is spreading like wildfire, which I'd encourage you to check that one out if you haven't. But that concept that Dr. Bill introduced me to was called the suspension of disbelief. Some of you may have heard of this before. Suspension of disbelief is the act of avoiding critical thinking and logic to believe something that is unreal or impossible, right? It kind of reminds me of a scripture where there's this guy talking to Jesus, and Jesus says, if you believe, all things are possible. And there's actually some truancy, some truth to that, in the sense that if you're willing to believe in anything, then yes, you could believe that anything is possible. But that's a whole nother conversation. But the guy responds by saying, I do believe, help my unbelief. I almost wanted to name this video, Lord, help my Lord, suspend my disbelief. But so it's this idea that we're suspending our disbelief. The term refers to a reader's willingness to believe in a fictional world, even if it contains elements that are highly implausible, fantastical, or contradictory to real life experiences or knowledge. And this phenomenon is not necessarily negative, and it's actually highly common among us, as we suspend our disbelief nearly every time we turn on the television or read a novel, or even strolling through social media, or sometimes even just reading the news. You have to suspend your disbelief. And for me, I recognize that I was suspending my disbelief every time I walked in or participated in a typical church service. So let's talk about this a little bit. Now, this phenomenon, again, is something that we all engage for most part. So when you go to a movie and you watch something like, I don't know, Iron Man, obviously I'm a Marvel fan, and you watch something about, like Iron Man, you have to suspend your disbelief about much of what's taken place in those movies, right? So even if it's just Tony Stark putting on this amazing suit that he builds this kind of core arc reactor to, and he can fly into black holes and stuff like that and survive in space and all of these things. And it's not that these things may not be possible one day, surely, but you already know, okay, these things are likely not possible, likely not plausible right now. There's likely not a mad titan named Thanos who's out there trying to destroy half of the world. There might be a mad titan named Yahweh. I don't know. Another conversation. Anyway, but the point is, in order to engage that movie, in order to enjoy that movie, in order to watch the Titanic, you have to suspend your disbelief about history. You already know the Titanic sinks, but in order to watch the movie and enjoy it, you have to allow yourself to believe that you don't know how this story is going to end. So again, this phenomenon is very common among humans. This is one of the ways that we've learned to socialize with media and entertainment. And this is one of this is also an area that I think we kind of overlook when dealing with our religious or superstitious beliefs. So there is a strong correlation between the suspension of disbelief and superstition. It would seem obvious, right? Superstitious beliefs require individuals to accept unfounded premises without critical examination. So again, when you're watching a Marvel movie, you're not trying to figure out how this is possible for Spider-Man. You're not trying to figure out how King the Conqueror can actually slip in and out of time. You've already, suspended your disbelief to enjoy the movie, much like what we do with religion. You're not necessarily trying to figure out how God could have impregnated, this teenage girl. You've already suspended that disbelief to allow yourself that, no, this happens. Otherwise, if I don't suspend this disbelief, I won't be able to enjoy this narrative. I won't be able to appreciate it. So in order to even appreciate it, I need to suspend my disbelief. Now, you don't actually have to, but that's just kind of the thing that we convince ourselves of. Now, by suspending those disbeliefs, individuals can embrace superstitions that provide psychological comfort, a sense of control over the uncontrollable, or, which I find to be most common, social cohesion, despite the lack of empirical evidence. But then this also connected to dissonance. Cognitive dissonance occurs when an individual holds two or more contradictory beliefs, ideas, or values. For example, if you believe that God is a perfect creator, while at the same time believing that his creation is therefore imperfect. Now, that's a whole nother video about that particular dichotomy, but we'll jump there later. Or this idea that God is love, even when he's behaving unloving, right? So these are places of cognitive dissonance. The suspension of disbelief temporarily alleviates that cognitive dissonance by allowing the individual to accept conflicting information without resolving the contradiction. For example, someone might recognize the logical inconsistencies in a belief system, but choose to overlook them for the sake of personal or communal harmony, which is something that we do see a lot. But see, then there's also the connection of our suspension disbelief and the persistence of dangerous cults, or the reemergence of dangerous cults. The success of dangerous cults often hinges on the members' willingness to suspend their disbelief and accept the cult's doctrines, even when they're harmful or contradict observable reality. Cult leaders frequently exploit this mechanism to build a shared narrative that isolates members from outside perspectives and reinforces the cult's worldview, making it difficult for members to question or leave the group, which I would like to actually call your attention to some of the behavior that you also see in my comments. Many times when I share my videos, I do my best not to particularly attack anybody, and so my videos are just me sharing my thoughts. And then we also have plenty of our subscribers and supporters who come in the comments and share their thoughts. And it almost never fails that people who have suspended their disbelief and embraced this sort of cognitive dissonance and superstitious lifestyles just by other people saying, hey, that's not my lifestyle anymore, or hey, I'm so glad you're sharing this information. These superstitious people feel absolutely led, if we can say that, to jump in the comments and attack those people who have left. Those people who have said, I am so glad to be on this side of reason. You can just go in my comments and you will watch the superstitious attack them, where you never believed in the first place, where you didn't have any real kind of faith, where you've never tasted of the goodness of God. This is all what happens when you have people who have suspended their disbelief so far that not only are they willing to believe foolishness, but they are willing to attack and persecute others who do not share in their delusions. All right. This is one of the reasons why I share this kind of information, so we can kind of rip the Band-Aid off of this and finally start calling delusion out for what it is. Okay, and then lastly, we'll deal with disbelief and the prevalence, the suspension of disbelief and the prevalence of religion, as that's kind of what got this conversation started. Religion often encompasses beliefs, narratives, and doctrines that include supernatural elements, miracles, and events that defy empirical evidence and the laws of nature as understood by science. The prevalence of religion in many societies can be greatly attributed to the suspension of disbelief, where followers choose to accept religious teachings and experiences despite their divergence from empirical verification. The prevalence of religious beliefs can also be influenced by education and exposure, or often the lack thereof. In environments where religious education predominates and critical thinking about religious claims is not encouraged, suspension of disbelief may be more common, causing unfounded claims to be more widely accepted. Now, this is a phenomenon that I've definitely seen throughout the majority of my life, where it is easy to get people who are already predisposed to accepting superstitious beliefs to accept other unfounded beliefs, because at this moment they're not even aware that they're suspending their disbelief in their mind, primarily because of the comfort of sociology, which means there's other people around me who share these same delusions. Because of that comfort, it makes it even harder to recognize that I am engaging in behavior that might be delusional. And so I highlight this because I am of the persuasion that if people are given the language and the tools to understand their dilemmas with misinformation, they'll be able to do a better job in digging themselves out. That's all I have for now. Thank you for spending a little time with me.